The regular season is heating up, new stars are emerging, and that means more opportunities to win up to 25 times your cash on Prize Picks, the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Just select 2 or more players, pick more or less on their projection on a wide variety of stats, and place your entry. It's that easy. Let it fly to turn $10 into $250 with just a few taps. Easy gameplay, quick withdrawals, and injury insurance on your picks are what make Prize Picks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. Watch your favorite players and get paid doing it this basketball season. See your entries make progress during the game or make new entries for the second half and the fourth quarter. 3-pointers, assists, rebounds, and everything in between are yours for the taking. Join the Prize Picks community of more than 7 million players who have already signed up. Right now, Prize Picks will match your first deposit of up to $100. Just download the Prize Picks app and use code GET100. That's code GET100 on Prize Picks for a first deposit match of up to $100. Prize Picks. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy.
Hi guys, quick one before we get into the episode. This episode is sponsored by Zencastr, which is the production suite that I've used from the very beginning of this podcast. And if you're interested in starting your own podcast, hang around at the end of the episode for our 30% discount referral code. Thanks.
So our podcast is called Right and Wrong.
Are these your notes?
These
These are your notes about what we're going to say?
Anything.
Nailed it.
It's the short answer.
So how many novels did you not finish?
Oh my God, so many.
It was perfect. What's she talking about? This is nonsense.
Ooh, a spicy question. I love it.
This is it, guys. The big secret to getting published is you have to write a good book. You heard it here first. Hello, and welcome back to the Right and Wrong podcast. I'm Jamie, and joining me today is a veteran of the publishing industry with decades of experience working at some of the biggest publishers in the world, and now co-founder and CEO of Whitefox. Please welcome to the show, John Bond. Hi.
Hello, Jamie. How are you?
I'm very well, thanks. How are you?
Good, fine, thank you. It's always nice to be referred to as a veteran.
Well, yes. Just as long as we don't discuss exactly how many years it is, right? We don't want to make you feel too old.
No.
Let's start off with Whitefox itself. Could you give me and everyone listening a sort of overview of what it is that you guys do over there?
Yeah, so Whitefox, which is 10 years old this year. In fact, just this last month, April, we celebrated our 10th anniversary. So Whitefox was set up in a way to provide access to the very best, highest quality professional publishing services that anybody could want, whether you're an individual writer, you're a traditional publisher, you're a business or a brand, or anybody that wants to make a book. We help you do that with the use of the very best curated network of freelancers, but also our own experience and expertise, and because largely we are made up of refugees from traditional publishing houses, as you said, with many decades of experience. So we're trying to help people have access to that wouldn't otherwise be able to get that or know how to get it.
Right. Okay. So you work with, I mean, you've just said, so it's self-publishers as well as people going through traditional publishing, and you also do you do something with ghostwriting as well?
Yeah, so what we do is bring people together. So right. our mission is to sort of oversee projects, whether they are an individual wanting to take something to market, whether you're a business or a brand who wants to create something that is the opposite of ephemera, something which will stick around and last for a long time, which is something we associate with the values of a book. And we're trying to help people who know nothing about that hold their hand through the whole thing. And that could start with something that needs to be ghostwritten and created from scratch, or it could start with something that already exists as an unedited, undesigned manuscript, and then try and help, people turn that into whatever it is their end objective is, whether that's something they want to publish privately, whether it's something they want to make available and sell through the traditional channels that all books are sold and bought via, whether they want to do that internationally and not just through the UK. So it's really, we don't have a publishing schedule. Traditional publishers have a publishing schedule into which they fit books that they acquire and commission, and we don't. Everything we're doing is driven by the people or the individuals or the companies that come to us and say, this is what we want. And our schedule is, in a sense, their schedule then, in terms of what the drivers and objectives are.
Okay. So would you say that your clients, would you say it's a sort of roughly 50-50 split between self-publishing and traditional publishing, the people that you're working with?
Well, we started off, it was pretty much 90% traditional publishing, because those were our contacts. And really what we knew how to do was to help manage the diaspora of freelancers and act as a kind of agency for people who wanted to either create a pipeline of books or launch a new series or wanted us to help them project manage a complicated color illustrated book or series of books. So it started off, I would say, much more skewed towards our contacts within, because we come out of traditional publishing. Our contacts were, writers, agents, publishers, and that's how we ended up doing our initial work. I'd say it's definitely over 10 years. The market for people wanting to do things themselves, be driven by their own creative impulses, wanting to do things more quickly often than traditional publishers can do, but where they want to have control over that, has grown enormously and matured as a market. So I'd say it's probably now 70% of what we're doing is with individuals and businesses and brands that want to do their own thing rather than traditional publishers. And that's not because we don't want to work with traditional publishers. We love doing that.
Yeah.
But I think, that's where the market has kind of evolved as we've grown up.
Yeah. So having been in the industry for a long time and working quite specifically in traditional publishing, watching it sort of change and evolve, do you think that self-publishing is now sort of more accessible than it's ever been?
I definitely. I mean, look, there are loads more vendors of services, whether they be, marketplace platforms where you can find somebody, an individual to work with, or people like us who represent a full service kind of agency model where you're buying, in a sense, our experience and our consultancy and advice, as well as access to very well vetted and curated databases of freelancers. So I think that's grown up, and I think the evolution of and the ubiquity of Amazon and the migration of sales to be primarily now online. Most people are buying books online. That's all happened over the last 10 years, and also the market has become much more regulated. So there are, sharing our 10th birthday this year is the Alliance of Independent Authors, who are a not-for-profit organization that are making sure that people who do want to independently publish are protected and have a lot of information about how to do that and to beware of pitfalls that they might have, and great repositories of information on how to and where to go and how to do it properly. So I think that's all changed, and it's become much more mainstream to do that. One of the things I always like to do is, if you look at the overall top selling books at any 1 hour on Amazon.co.uk or .com, and you look at the top 100, you'll see lots of familiar sites and lots of famous books and books that are, whether it's the Highway Code or David Walliams or whatever it is, lots of things that you recognize that are selling and why they're selling. And then you'll see books that you don't know the imprint that is being published under, the name of that. It's not a Penguin or a Faber or a Random House or whatever. It's something other. And it could be that is a new imprint from within a traditional publishing house that they have launched recently. It could be it's somebody doing their own thing, but who've managed to get some PR and marketing and some cut through in amongst all the noise. And they're there. It's another book to buy in exactly the same way. And the book will have been edited, and it will have been proofread and designed, and the cover designed and made available through the same channels as everybody else. So I think that's definitely something we now take for granted a lot more.
Yeah, I guess you're right in saying it's the access to professionals. It's that you individually can find a freelance editor online. You can find someone to do the cover. You can find someone to do the proofs, all this, that, the other. Whereas previously, I think it was a bit more sort of closed off.
I think so. It used to be that there were traditional gatekeepers to have access. You know, the kind of the chain of command was, I am a writer, I need an agent to find a publisher. If there's a relay race within the publishing house, the book comes out the other end. It needs a retailer. And that chain has been broken in a way so that the access that the writer has to the reader has become much more immediate.
Yes.
And then around that ecosystem, a lot of people coalescing who, want to be part of that process in a helpful, commercially relevant way to those people. So that's how we've sort of evolved our offering and our proposition along those lines. Because what we found was that nobody wants a half decent cover or an okay copy edit or proofread. They want the best that they can get access to. And if they can't get that through a traditionally published route, it needs some expertise, we think, and to say, okay, well, look, I think this person would be the right person for you to connect with. They will get your book. They will understand, what your objectives are and your aims are. And you can start creating teams of people, which is what makes self-publishing such a misnomer, because it's, you can obviously do it yourself, but the reality is the most successful people are part of organizing around them for their book, part of a team who can help find readers for their book.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they have essentially constructed what would be the team that a traditional publisher would put around them. They've just constructed that on their own with freelancers or what have you.
I think so. I think, there are writers who are incredibly comfortable marketing themselves and sharing every single piece of information about the process of writing, and on publication and post-publication. And then there are writers that are very private and hate that and who want to, want other people to help them do all of those things and advise them and hold their hand throughout all the kind of quite complicated processes of how you take a book, take a raw manuscript and take it to market. And so I think there are people who have been incredibly successfully publishing, have their trusted team around them, their editors, their designers, their marketers and their publicists and whatever. And then there are people that just don't even know where to begin to do that. And how are they going to find the right people at the right time and get advice on what that schedule should look like so that they know what they should be doing at each stage in the process. So that's where that definitely sort of is where people like us come in terms of giving that sort of advice.
Yeah, well, that's great because, I mean, it's a position that I think most writers have been in, where they've sort of written something or thought about writing something and then said, okay, but what's the next step? How do I go from having the words on the page to having this, printed as a book or in an e-shop or something like that? And it is an unusual and complicated industry. But let's imagine for a second that I wanted to self-publish and I came to you. And I know it'll be a sort of bespoke process based on, what the client wants, needs. But what, in terms of broad strokes, are the steps that we would go through if I came to you and said, I've written a book, I'd like to self-publish it, please help me?
So we are maybe different to others. We would rather do more with less. So we largely people come to us via recommendation referral, which is wonderful. It is incredibly broad ranging because it could be adult, children's fiction, non-fiction. It could be, I want to produce a very complicated, large color illustrated cookbook, or I want to produce a very short black and white novella. So, and obviously some of those things require different conversations from the get-go. But usually we are trying to find as much information out as possible at the beginning of the whole process to find what the aspirations are. What is the state of the text? Is this something which has just been written and has never been looked at by anybody else? Is it something that requires not just copy editing, but structural editing in terms of how much collaboration and of a process does the writer want with somebody who may be working with them for months on their manuscript to make sure that it is as good as it can possibly be. But our aim with everybody is to sort of say, what does, how can we deliver what is feasible, realistic, practically the best solution for this book? What does the timeline look like that gives you the most opportunity in terms of selling and marketing and publicizing the book? How can we make sure that not just that we have allocated the right person, but that we have found the right team of freelancers and scheduled in their time so that we can guarantee that they will be available to work on the book. And then we would put a proposal together. We would say, look, here's a timeline and here are the processes. We try and be really transparent about everything. We like this idea of, what they call unbundling the processes. So publishing isn't just this one generic magical thing called publishing, where a manuscript goes in one end and out pops a book. Mm-hmm. We try and lay out all the processes in as much detail as people want to say, look, here are the things that will need to happen for this book to be as successful as it can be. We'll create the team. We'll tell you what that looks like from a timing point of view. We'll try and scope out what that looks like in terms of a return on your initial investment on that, so that you will need to see, if you're doing it yourself, how many copies you need to sell to justify that kind of investment. And we try and be really, really we see our role to be really clear and transparent and open and collaborative, which all sounds, I know that sounds a bit weird, because why would you not be like that? But I think, we also try and be really, really realistic with people about, what their aspirations should be for something, because there's a difference between, I run a business, I am a thought leader in a space, I have, 20,000 followers on LinkedIn, I have a very healthy engagement with my regular newsletters that I'm emailing to people. And I think I can sell X numbers of books to those people because, I already am having a conversation with potential, not just readers, but buyers of my book. There's a big difference between that and I've written my first novel and I don't have any kind of social media presence. But I put my heart and soul into this book for 10 years and, these are my aspirations for it. So how to tell people that, both those books exist, how to create discoverability around them are very different propositions in a world where, 180, 200,000 books are being published every year. So I think that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to sort of be clear with people about some of the practical issues to do with the publication as well.
Yeah. So, through that process, do you expect anything from the writer beyond them, working with you to create the best possible book and then giving some creative input? Do you expect them to be heavily involved in what would be the sort of latter processes, like the marketing aspects and things like that?
Yeah, I think it's, marketing is, rolling back the years for us, when we started, we were really set up to help produce books. Okay. And by that, I mean the process had almost stopped when the book existed, the file existed, the ebook was available, a POD book was available, a physical book was printed. And the reason we were quite cautious and circumspect about that, the end of the journey, as it were, was, that's the bit that everybody is going to be really focused on. That's the really hard bit, actually getting your book into the supply chain and distributed properly in a sophisticated way globally is really hard. And you have to have people, because you have to be people like us, at least, who represent a big enough aggregation of books to be of interest to the people like Ingram and the other kind of big distributors and wholesalers around the world, to actually be in their system. So, marketing is, for not just books, but for everything, is the sort of the most kind of unknowable, difficult thing, easy way to spend a lot of money and get no return on that investment. And we like people to have the happiest experience they possibly can and the best experience they have. And I think, so we do think that what is worth doing at the very beginning and with enough time prior to publication is to really find out what is right for this person in terms of telling the world that their book exists. So that could be somebody who's incredibly comfortable on social media, somebody who's active and embraces it and sees them as sees their own role as being the proselytizer for their own book, and they may have other people that are helping them, but they're definitely really comfortable doing that, which is what all traditionally published authors are asked to do anyway. So it's no different whether you're inside or outside of a publishing house. But then there are people who are really uncomfortable and do not know where to begin. And I think working out what is the right route for them, the right partnerships, could be with PR agencies, it could be with people who are going to teach the writer, educate them, if you like, in the ways that are best for them, because then when it comes to book 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, then they'll have skills that they will have learned with the first book. The book is sort of like the proof of concept, and they'll hopefully go on to be much more comfortable with it. But we would ideally suggest, yes, that writers come with a desire to market their own books and an open mind about how to do that. Because, if you build it, they will come, in my experience, is not true. Because they won't come if they don't know it exists. So it has to be something where, whether it's and it doesn't have to be, I need to be on the Today program on Radio 4. It could be, I have something happening for me locally in which I can engage my local, media and local booksellers, and you can think small, but even that, is a good way to start thinking about the building blocks of making sure that people are interested in, who are interested in your book can find it.
Yeah, because I mean, even if it's the greatest novel that's ever been written, you need to put it in front of someone so that they could tell someone else, and eventually the word of mouth can get around, and you have built it, and they will come. But you have to start somewhere, right?
Well, you have to start ideally before the book is published. I mean, that's, the whole world has changed now. Also, online sales mean that I can look on, again, referring back to that Amazon top 100, that list is live and refreshed the whole time. And that could include books that are not out until October this year. But somebody has put something on Twitter to tell somebody who has a very successful podcast, tell their listeners that they've got a book coming out. And there's been an immediate an immediate kind of engagement with an audience that then wants to pre-order that book so that they will get it on day one of publication. That will send it up, algorithmically send it up the chart. So, the more you can do to get people pre-ordering, get some excitement going in the build-up to publication, the less pressure there is on publication to actually have everything go off like a sort of massive pyrotechnical display.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, I mean, it sounds like what you guys offer, once you've sort of figured out what the client needs and you set up the team around them, the main difference between someone wanting to self-publish with your help and go through traditional publishing is that they will be fronting the cash themselves.
Yeah. So our model is we don't own intellectual property. We don't own rights. We're helping facilitate something on behalf of somebody who wants to retain their rights. So as can sometimes happen, as has happened with us quite a few times, somebody will do something themselves. They'll self-publish. They're independently published. They'll make their book available, and it will sell. And an agent will pick it up, or a publisher will pick it up, and they'll revert the rights. Traditional publisher will pick those up, and then they'll do multi-book contracts with people who started their journey with us. But yeah, it's a different. The way I would say it's a different financial proposition. A publisher is making a certain number of investments, commissions, gambles, if you like, a year. They'll see their portfolio as these are my repeating brands. Here's there's a heated auction for between 12 publishers for this first novel. They're placing their bets on certain things, and a proportion of those performing sufficiently well to offset the ones that don't work. In our world, we're trying to work with people, and as I was sort of referring to earlier, we don't say we absolutely don't say we're the right model for everybody, and we certainly don't say yes to everything that comes our way, because the way we work suits certain types of publishing. Often where somebody says, I don't want to wait 18 months to 2 years for this to go through the traditional kind of agent selling to publisher fitting it into their schedule. They want to do things within 3 to 6 months. They want to be driving the car, as it were. They want to be in charge of all the key decisions that are made from a creative point of view. And they want to work collaboratively with, a high quality of freelancer. And I would hope us, and adding value to something to the extent that they will say, yeah, I'll invest in that to make sure that I get what I want. And then once that book goes on sale, basically the vast majority of the cost that isn't taken by a retailer or a distributor comes to them. So that's the way of looking at it, which is why I was saying earlier, we try and help people scope it out in the beginning so they're clear about what that looks like in terms of, I need to sell X to cover my costs, and then once I've done that, I start making money back from this process.
Okay. So it's sort of like, it's like having instead of having an advance and waiting to pay off your advance before you get the royalties, you put the money up front and then you immediately get the royalties. But obviously you're trying to make up the deficit of the initial investment.
Correct.
Got it.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. So as I say, different businesses have different models. Our model is money flows back as quickly as possible from when we are paid by retailers or wholesalers or whoever, and that goes back to the client so that they can hopefully start to see some of that quite quickly. And often it's going back to your question about marketing. People come to us with their eyes wide open about what it is they want to do and who they think will buy their book, and are quite commercially savvy about doing the calculations to say, well, look, I think logically everything I know about my own network and platform suggests I'm going to be able to sell, X. So they go into it thinking, and I'm, I am going to be responsible, either writer, either business, either brand. I'm going to be able to tell people that this book exists, and I think I'm going to sell X, and that gives me comfort when I think about what I'm going to spend to create the thing that I want to create. And once it's there, that's the beauty of books. It's that gravitas and that authority and longevity, which can't be replicated by a 50-page PDF that you can just delete.
Yeah.
It's that sort of cultural resonance that you've got for decades to come.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. That sounds great. And do you have any plans to expand the sort of range of services at Whitefox, or are you kind of happy with the package you guys have at the moment?
I mean, we have expanded relatively recently, so we've got the whole kind of international distribution side. very much been on our mind, and we've ended up working with authors in different languages and different territories, and that's been very exciting. And we set up Whitefox in the US in 2018, and that's really exciting because that's evolving quite quickly. My co-founder Annabelle is over there and has been for now a few years, and so she's very much doubling down on the opportunities in the US, which is exciting. So it's not so much services as sort of broadening the accessibility to what we do. I think because it does. I mean, definitely, it was very interesting working during the pandemic, where we were all working from home, working remotely, as a lot of people were. What became obvious was that the idea that you could still start writing something or finish writing something, that you could have somebody do all the things we've been talking about in this podcast remotely, organized by us. We could then make that book available online. You could then get money back from the book sales. It's a lot of people started to think about, starting something, making something. And I think it was definitely quite liberating for a lot of individuals who suddenly thought, well, the rest of my life is on hold, but I can still do this and I can do it successfully. And that's definitely been something that has sort of accelerated over the last 3 years, I think, of people getting much more confident in their ability of how to sort of navigate this area of publishing.
Yeah. Before I get into the last question, tapping into your sort of experience, having worked in publishing for a long time, have you noticed any big shifts in the industry that you think might be a sort of direction that it's headed in the future?
I think it's interesting. I mean, I had a conversation with somebody last week that was saying to me, do you think big publishers are getting more risk averse? And I think my answer to that was, I don't think they need to be anything other than that, because they're very capable at spotting outliers and bringing them into their business when the concept has been proved. So in a way, that's no different from tech or from film or from music or from, anything else, I think. They don't need to be radical in that sense. They can bring that into their business and their and expertise within their business. I mean, I think that they will embrace e-commerce a bit more, as in, I think they've got so much data. They've got so much of their relationship is tied in with, Waterstones in the UK, Barnes and Noble in the US, and Amazon everywhere. Mm-hmm. Some massive players. And over whom traditional publishers, they have a lot of content that those platforms want, but I'm not sure they have an enormous amount of influence over them. So I think the whole idea of, even though publishers don't want to be retailers, the idea that they can, sell directly, I think will become more appealing, just for all sorts of obvious, stating the obvious, margin and, data and everything else. I think that will probably evolve a bit more, but we'll see. I don't know. I mean, I think from our point of view, we like this idea of existing sort of in the cracks, so that we're working with all these different people and types of businesses and individuals and others, because it feels very contemporaneously kind of relevant to us. That people will want to move quickly. People will think to them. Some people will think to themselves, "Well, I am doing all of the I am expected to do all of the marketing and publicizing of my own book. Maybe then the traditional model doesn't necessarily suit me, because maybe the publisher needs me more than I need them in terms of, creating awareness for my publication." So I think we'll see some of that experimenting. I think that's what people will do. People will take a few risks and experiment, and we'll see where that leads.
Yeah, well, that's exciting. That's an exciting look on the future of the industry. And Yeah, it's great that you say you kind of exist between the cracks. And Whitefox, you guys have really managed to find yourself a good spot where you're not treading on anyone's toes, but you're sort of integrated throughout all stages of the process and sort of linked to a lot of different areas, which is really cool.
I think so. We've really tried hard not to step on toes because we work incredibly closely with publishers. We work incredibly closely with agents. And I think people get what we do. So we don't want to become the equivalent of those. Yeah. We want to sort of be something slightly different. And I think thus far we've managed that. We'll see where that goes in the future. But
fingers crossed.
At the moment, yeah, fingers crossed. We don't tread on too many more toes.
Amazing. Well, that brings us to the final question, which as always is, John, if you were stranded on a desert island with a single book, which book would you take?
Oh, look, that's easy. I have had for a long time by the side of my bed a book written by a really rather wonderful music journalist called Ian MacDonald, who's sadly no longer with us, who wrote a book called Revolution in the Head, which is a book which documents every single song that the Beatles wrote.
Okay.
And it goes into absolute minute detail of where they were, who was playing on it, what happened at 1 minute 19 on the 30th of April, 1968. And you can open that book at any moment and you're into, a song or a kind of, a musical event or something, and it is utterly, endlessly, completely, compellingly fascinating. And I would choose that because I would never get bored.
That sounds great. I'm always, I often have Spotify.
It's great.
I will. I often have Spotify on my phone, and I don't know if you've seen this on Spotify. It sometimes does random trivia for the song that you're listening to. So I was listening to some Rolling Stones the other day, and it had these really interesting tidbits just about the song and like what whoever it was, Mick Jagger, was doing on that day and what inspired him to write the song. So that sounds great.
Yeah.
And we're all fans of the Beatles.
And that's definitely pushing me into the veteran box even further. But
nonsense.
What the hell?
All love the Beatles. Amazing. Well, thank you, John. Thanks so much for coming on and telling us all about Whitefox and sharing your knowledge and experience of the publishing industry.
Not at all, Jamie. It's a complete pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And for anyone interested in finding out more about Whitefox, you can go on the website www.wearewhitefox.com. Their Twitter is @wearewhitefox and the Instagram is @whitefox_publishing. To make sure you don't miss an episode of this podcast, follow us on Twitter @RightandWrongUK or on Instagram @RightandWrongPodcast. Thanks again to John and thanks to everybody listening. We'll catch you in the next episode. Thanks for hanging around until the end. If you're interested in starting your own podcast but aren't really sure what that looks like, I can't recommend Zencastr enough. It's so simple to host, record, and download your podcast with, and it even has a built-in transcription AI. It functions entirely in the internet browser, which means all your guests have to do is click on a link and they'll be brought into the conversation. If you click on the link in the description, you'll get 30% off the first 3 months. All you have to do is click on the link in the description. Thanks again for supporting the show, and we'll see you in the next episode.